Hello, I'm Joe, and I'm currently sheltering in place here in my tiny apartment on top of Potrero Hill. Today, I'll talk to you about California's most famous duel and how it might have changed the course of American history. Of course, I mean the duel fought in 1859 near Lake Merced between two bearded guys named Dave, U.S. Senator David Broderick and State Supreme Court Chief Justice David Terry. Spoiler, Broderick dies, gets a street named after him, and is remembered as a hero. Terry lives, and things don't go great for him. If you aren't familiar with the story of the 1859 Broderick-Terry Duel, feel free to pause this video and do some Googling. Rather than explain why two grown, reasonable men would settle their differences by arranging a murder meeting in a cow pasture, I'm going to talk about some common misconceptions about this duel. And we'll see how it impacted American history. Now, two stories that get told over and over about this duel. It was the last duel in American history, and it was fought over slavery. Lies! Well, inaccuracies. First of all, it wasn't even the last duel in the Bay Area. There was another one fought 2 years later in San Anselmo that was similar in a lot of ways, but didn't make national news. And the duel wasn't really an argument about slavery. It did have its roots in slavery-related politics, sort of. Both Daves were Democrats, and had been friends a few years earlier. But this argument happens just a year and a half before the Civil War starts. The Democratic Party is tearing itself in half about slavery, like the country generally, and Broderick and Terry were on different sides. Broderick was a New Yorker, an alum of Tammany Hall. He was opposed to the expansion of slavery, mostly because of its threat to his base, free white labor. Terry was a Southern Democrat who would go on to fight for the Confederacy during the war. The political climate was very tense in 1859, and campaigns in California that year were ugly. Sectarian tensions were high. There was generally a bad vibe in the scene. Well, Broderick winds up calling Terry a liar. One of Terry's friends hears him, and it is on. Calling a gentleman a liar was the most reliable way to get yourself into a duel. Old-fashioned notions of honor were still taken seriously, and only the most upstanding, virtuous people could afford to dismiss or ignore threats to their reputation. You had to take it seriously. So this insult spun off from a bigger political fight that was about slavery, sort of. But this was a pretty normal garden-variety duel about some guy's insulted honor. Terry was super uptight, generally, and got offended pretty easily. Broderick was sort of a jerk. He was cranky and moody, even with his friends. So why do we remember it that other way? Heck, why do we remember it at all? Because Broderick happened to die, which was sort of a fluke, and he had one hell of a funeral. Tons of people attended, and his eulogy was delivered by Edward Baker, who was an awesome public speaker and buddies with Abraham Lincoln. Baker's eulogy makes Broderick a heroic martyr. He literally put last words into Broderick's mouth. "I died because I was opposed to the extension of slavery." Well, Californians and Northerners love the way this fits into a bigger political story, and Broderick's image permanently changes. Instead of being remembered as a low-key corrupt gold rush political boss, he's still remembered today as the guy who got killed because he hated slavery. This is important because Broderick's martyrdom means that when the Civil War does kick off, California comes in on the side of the Union. This wasn't a foregone conclusion. There were lots of Southern sympathizers around, but at the time, people felt that the backlash to Broderick's death really tipped the scales. And with California came gold. If the wealth of the West had gone back to the South rather than the North, the Civil War could very well have turned out differently. So, the way the duel was spun at the time had a historical impact that we still feel today. Now, there's a lot more that we could talk about. Terry's life after the duel, the pistols that they used, and what's up with dueling anyway. Next time.